How many fish have you lost this year where you had no idea what went wrong? Line just broke. Hook pulled free. Fish that was there 1 second and gone the next. I kept a notebook for 2 full seasons. Every trip, I logged what went wrong. After more than 200 entries, the same 20 mistakes kept coming back. Most of them are invisible while you're making them. You can't feel a weakened knot. You can't see what's on your hands. You don't notice your rod tip is in the wrong spot. The fish aren't outsmarting you. Something in your setup is giving them a reason to never bite in the first place. And the last one, about matching your bait to what's actually in the water, is the mistake that separates guys who catch fish sometimes from guys who catch them every trip. You just landed a solid base. You're feeling good. You cast right back to the same spot. 20 minutes later, something thumps the line and you sweep the rod, and the line snaps like a thread. That knot held fine on the fish you just caught, but the fight stressed it. Every fish you land creates micro damage at the knot, tiny abrasions and heat from friction as the line slides against itself under load. Fluorocarbon is especially vulnerable because it's stiffer and doesn't absorb shock the way monofilament does. Pulling free from a snag is even worse. The force you use to rip loose stretches the line right at the knot and weakens it by as much as 30 to 40%. I lost 3 fish in one morning on Lake St. Clair before a guide finally grabbed my line and showed me the damage. You could see the flattened spot where the knot had been crushed. His rule was simple: retie after every fish. Retie after every snag. 30 seconds of prevention. I haven't lost a fish to a knot failure since I started doing it. The fix for the next one takes even less time. Wet your line before you cinch any knot. Every time. Spit on it, dip it in the water, anything. When you pull a dry knot tight, the friction generates heat, and that heat weakens monofilament and fluorocarbon at the molecular level. It's a thermoplastic material, which means it softens and deforms when it gets warm. A lab at Berkeley tested this and found dry knots can lose up to 50% of their rated strength compared to the same knot cinched wet. 50%. That means your 10-pound line is acting like 5-pound at the knot. You've been tying knots your whole life. But if you've been tying them dry, they've been half as strong as they should be. The fix takes 2 seconds. Lick your fingers and wet the wraps before you pull them down. Run your line between your thumb and finger every 30 minutes or so. Feel for rough spots, flat sections, or anything that catches your skin. If you find a nick, cut 6 inches above it and retie. I'll be honest, I don't always remember to do this. But the trips where I do, my break-off rate drops to almost 0. This is especially important if you're fishing around rocks, dock pilings, or oyster bars. One brush against a hard surface can create a weak point you'll never see. Most guys fill their reel spool right to the lip. Looks right. Feels like you're getting your money's worth out of that line. But overfilling causes coils to jump off the spool during the cast, and those loose coils wrap around the bail, the reel foot, or each other. The result is a tangle that takes 5 minutes to fix while the bite is happening all around you. Fill to about 1/8 of an inch below the lip, roughly the thickness of a business card laid flat on the spool edge. Underfilling is almost as bad. A half-empty spool kills your casting distance because the line has to climb over that tall lip on every cast. The sweet spot is right at that business card thickness. Check it before every trip. If you're fishing braided line and tying the same improved clinch knot you learned on monofilament, you're losing fish. Braid is slippery. It's woven fibers, not a single strand. An improved clinch on braid can slide right open under pressure, especially when a big catfish or bass makes that first hard run. The Palomar knot is stronger on braid because it wraps the line around itself in a way that locks under tension instead of sliding. For mono and fluoro, the clinch works fine. You don't need to learn 10 knots. 2 or 3 covers everything. Palomar for braid. improved clinch or uni for mono and fluorocarbon. Match the knot to the line, and the line holds up to its rated strength instead of failing at half. You've got the right line and the right knot. Now think about what's on your hands. Your skin produces a compound called L-serine, and university research has confirmed that trout and salmon actively avoid it. Catfish and walleye show the same avoidance response. Sunscreen is worse. The UV-blocking chemicals dissolve into water and create a scent trail that follows your bait. If you pumped gas on the way to the lake, there's a petroleum film on your fingers that transfers to everything you touch. The old-timers knew this before the science caught up. They'd rub their hands in dirt or crush a piece of bait between their palms before rigging up. The modern version is a squirt of unscented dish soap or a pinch of coffee grounds rubbed between your hands and rinsed in the lake. I tracked this on Wheeler over a full spring season. Days when I washed my hands before handling bait averaged about 35% more bites. Same baits, same spots, same weather patterns. The only variable was what was on my skin. 35%. From a habit that takes 10 seconds. That crankbait that crushed it for you in June is sitting in your tackle box in November doing nothing. You keep throwing it because it's your confidence bait. But the fish aren't the same in November. Their metabolism has dropped with the water temperature, and what they'll chase changes with it. In 65-degree water, bass and walleye chase a fast-moving crankbait because they have the energy to run it down. In 50-degree water, they won't move 3 feet for it. A slow-falling jig or a finesse worm dragged along the bottom is what gets bit when the water is cold. I used to fish the same crankbait from March through November. Thought I was being consistent. I was being stubborn. Match your bait speed and profile to the water temperature. Slower and smaller as the water cools. Faster and bigger as it warms. The fish will tell you if you're right. When the bite gets tough, most guys throw bigger baits hoping to trigger a reaction. The fix is the opposite. Drop from a 5-inch worm to a 3-inch. Downsize your jig from 3/8 to a 1/4 ounce, about the weight of a golf tee. On pressured water or after a cold front, a smaller profile gets bit when nothing else will. This works across species. Crappie that won't touch a standard jig will hit a 1/64 ounce micro jig. Walleye that ignore a full-size minnow will eat a 2-inch paddle tail. Smaller isn't exciting. But on tough days, it's the difference between a blank and a limit. Your tackle box has a melted blob in one corner that used to be 6 different colors of soft plastics. Different brands use different plasticizer formulations, and when they touch each other in a hot truck bed, the chemicals migrate between them and fuse everything into a sticky mass. I've lost $50 worth of baits in a single afternoon because I left a Plano box on the back seat in July. Separate your plastics by brand and by color. Keep them in their original bags, sealed. And keep anything made by Z-Man completely away from everything else, because that Elazitech material will dissolve standard PVC plastics on contact. A Ziploc bag between brands is all the insurance you need. If you're picking up something useful, subscribe. We put out more of these every week. Your instinct after a long cast is that the bait landed in the right zone. But most fish holding near the bank, whether it's bass tucked under a dock or panfish sitting in the shade of a fallen tree, sit within 10 to 15 feet of shore. You cast 40 feet and your bait sailed right over their heads. The splash alone can spook fish in shallow water. Start with a short cast, maybe 15 feet. Fan outward from there. Work close water first. I watched a guy on Kentucky Lake catch 4 largemouth in a row by skipping a jig under a dock no more than 8 feet from where he was standing. The rest of us were bombing 50-foot casts to open water and getting nothing. The fish you're looking for might be right at your feet. I'll say this plainly. Fishing too fast is the single most common mistake I see on the water. More than bad knots, more than wrong lures. I watched dozens of guys at Kentucky Lake over 2 weekends and timed their retrieves. The average angler retrieved a jig or soft plastic roughly twice as fast as the guides fishing 50 yards away. When a buddy of mine slowed his retrieve by half, just counting to 3 between every rod movement, his catch rate jumped in a way that surprised both of us. The invisible mistake here is that your brain tells you faster means more casts, and more casts means more fish. But that math only works if the fish are actively chasing. 9 days out of 10, they're sitting still and waiting for something to drift by slow enough to eat without burning more energy than the meal is worth. Slow down, then slow down again. 3 casts to the same spot is a conversation. 10 casts is harassment. Every time your bait splashes down in the same zone, it pushes fish farther away or deeper into cover where they won't bite anything. Cast 3 or 4 times, then move 10 feet and try a different angle. Come back to that spot in 20 minutes with fresh water and settled nerves between you and the fish. One more cast syndrome is a real thing. I've watched guys make 15 consecutive casts to the same log while I caught 3 fish from the next dock over. Fight the urge. Move on. Keep your rod tip low during the retrieve. If your tip is at 11 o'clock and a fish hits, you've got almost no room to sweep upward for the hook set. You need that space between the rod's current position and the top of the arc. Retrieve with the tip at about 9 or 10 o'clock, pointed toward the water. That gives you a full sweeping arc from 9 to 12 when you feel the bite. It's a simple change in habit that doubles your hook set power overnight. Practice it on a few casts and it becomes automatic. When your bait hits the water, your instinct is to keep the line tight as it sinks. That tight line pulls the bait toward you in a pendulum arc instead of letting it fall straight down. Bass in particular reject that unnatural swing. They've been watching things fall naturally their entire lives, and a bait swinging sideways triggers avoidance, not feeding. After the cast, lower your rod tip and feed a couple feet of slack so the bait drops vertically, like something that actually just fell in. Watch the line where it enters the water. If it twitches or moves sideways during the fall, that's a bite. Most slackline bites happen before you ever feel a thing. Most people fish with the wind at their back because it's comfortable and casts go farther. But wind pushes bait fish against wind-blown banks and points, and every predator in the lake knows it. The uncomfortable cast, the one straight into the wind, is the productive cast. Walleye, bass, and white bass all stack up on wind-blown structure waiting for the buffet to arrive. I can't explain the thermodynamics perfectly, but the pattern held on every trip I logged at Canyon Lake over an entire summer. Wind-blown banks produced roughly 3 times the bites of sheltered banks on the same day. Position yourself upwind and cast into it. The extra effort is worth every fish. A $15 surface thermometer tells you more about where fish are than most electronics. Below 50 degrees, bass are sluggish and sitting deep near the bottom. Between 55 and 65, they're moving shallow and feeding actively, which is when you'll catch more fish in an hour than you will all day in cold water. Above 75, they retreat to deeper water near the thermocline, where dissolved oxygen levels are higher. Crappie and panfish follow similar patterns but shift a few degrees earlier. If you don't know the water temperature, you're guessing where the fish are and how they're behaving. Stop guessing. A thermometer costs less than 2 packs of soft plastics. These strategy mistakes matter most on normal days, the ones where fish are present but making you earn every bite. During a blitz when they're crashing bait on the surface, technique barely matters. Just get something in the water, but blitzes last minutes. The other 8 hours are when these mistakes start costing you. More big fish are lost at the boat from a locked drag than from any other single cause. The instinct is to crank the drag tight because you're afraid the fish will run. But when a 5-pound bass makes a surge and your drag doesn't give, something has to break. Either the line snaps, or the hook pulls free, or the hook point straightens out. Set your drag so it slips at roughly a third of your line's rated strength. With 10-pound line, the drag should start giving at about 3 pounds of pull. Here's a quick field test. Hold the rod tip up and pull line straight off the reel by hand. If it takes real effort to get line moving, your drag is too tight. It should give with a firm pull, not a yank. A fish that takes line against a properly set drag is a fish you're going to land. A fish that hits a locked spool is a coin flip you'll usually lose. Your rod guides are quietly shredding your line every cast. Salt deposits, mineral buildup, and microscopic nicks in the guide inserts create rough spots that abrade line under pressure. The damage is invisible until it costs you a fish. Run a cotton ball through each guide after a trip. If the cotton catches or tears, that guide has a groove that needs replacing before your next outing. A minute of inspection prevents the kind of break-off that makes you blame the knot when the problem was 6 feet up the rod the whole time. Saltwater anglers know this already. Freshwater guys usually learn it after losing something they shouldn't have. When a fish is pulling drag, stop reeling. The reel isn't a winch. Cranking the handle while the fish runs creates line twist that coils up the second the tension drops, and that twist causes tangles on your very next cast. Instead, pump and wind. Lift the rod smoothly to gain line, then reel down as you lower the tip. Lift, reel down. Lift, reel down. This is how charter captains land 50-pound stripers on 20-pound gear. The rod does the pulling. The reel stores what you've gained. If you can hear the drag screaming and you're still turning the handle, you're making the problem worse with every crank. This last one is the mistake I teased at the beginning, and it might be the most important on the entire list. You've got a white 6-inch swim bait tied on because it caught fish last spring. But the lake you're fishing right now is full of 3-inch golden shiners. The fish aren't interested in your bait because nothing in their world looks like it. Flip over a rock near shore. Watch what scatters when you walk the bank. Look at what the herons are eating. If the bait fish are small and dark, throw small and dark. If they're silver and skinny, throw something silver and skinny. I spent an afternoon on Wheeler where nothing worked until I waded a flat and spooked a cloud of tiny threadfin shad, maybe 2 inches long. Switched to a small silver fluke on a light jig head and caught 14 fish in the next 2 hours. Same water, same structure, same fish. The only thing that changed was matching what they were already eating. The bait doesn't matter. Matching the forage does. And that single idea, if you take nothing else from this list, will change more about your fishing than the other 19 combined. The guy who retied his knot, washed his hands, slowed down his retrieve, and took 30 seconds to look at what was swimming near the bank didn't do anything complicated. He didn't buy new gear. He didn't learn a secret technique. He just stopped being invisible to the fish. Every fix on this list is free. Everyone takes less than a minute. And everyone addresses something you can't see while it's happening, which is exactly why these mistakes survive for years without getting fixed. The difference between a frustrating day and a full stringer was never about the rod or the reel or the boat. It was about the 20 small things nobody told you to check.